Hello! I've been thinking of an animal this week, a creature. It wasn't a majestic lion or a wonderful peacock, a giraffe or a multicoloured kingfisher. Not even in all the weather that we've had was it a duck. It was an ant. I don't know how many of you are following Perfect Planet, the new David Attenborough series. It's amazing. But last week you would have seen some fire ants facing a terrible tragedy. They were going to be flooded out of their homes. But the little ants worked together, built themselves into a raft, and saved their queen and their colony and themselves. In the Bible, ants are mentioned. It says, "Take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones. Learn from their ways and become wise." So what can we learn from the ants? Well, there are 12,000 different species. They all have a job to do. There are worker ants who build the nests, collect food, soldier ants who defend the nest, and the queen who lays millions of eggs. They all work together for the good of the colony. They even take turns working and resting. When Paul wrote to the Christians in Corinth, he said, "We are many parts of one body. All of us have a part to play." Now in our church, there are lots of jobs to be done. There'll be even more with John retiring and the interregnum coming. I wonder what part you could play in our church team. There are obviously some very talented people who lead us in worship on a Sunday morning. I know I couldn't join that team because it would empty the church really quickly. There are people who work on the welcome team and on the flower team, making sure that people feel included and cared for. That's a great job to do. There are people who work in our children's and youth teams. Brilliant jobs, looking after and sharing good news with our children. And obviously, none of this would be possible without our techie team. We've certainly learnt to appreciate them in the last few months. We all have a part to play. As Helen told us last week, we're never too young or too old to play a role, to have a job to do in the body of Christ. I'm always struck when we do Summer Madness, or now any of the Madness events, how many people are involved. It's not just the two silly people at the front. There's a whole army of people behind us, making sure it runs smoothly, making sure that the good news of Jesus is shared with our community. Now, if you're thinking, well, I couldn't do any of that, please don't. Remember, all the activities in the church need people to help, but also to pray. And praying for the things that happen in church is really important. We're part of a team, and you have a role to play. You could pray, but also you're never too old or too young to get in touch with someone else in church. You could write them a card or a letter. You could drop them a note. You could draw them a picture. You could ring someone. It's really important that we all know that we're being cared for and looked after. Reaching out to someone is a really good way of doing that. And finally, let me introduce you to Josh. Josh is Richard's great nephew. He's 7 years old, and throughout January he's decided he's going to run a mile a day to raise money for his local food bank. He wanted to raise £250. So far, he's raised 10 times that amount. He's only young, he's only small, but he's decided to try and help. In this pandemic, we've all been told that we've got a role to play. We need to stay at home, we need to wash our hands, we need to keep our distance. We need to be part of the team effort to beat this virus. In our church life, in our church team, we also have a role to play. You see, you're never too old or too young to be a part of God's team. So what part will you play?